What's going on, guys? Dan from SSG bringing you another Edison format deck profile. This time I'm bringing you my Insect X-saber deck. Yeah, this is a pretty sweet deck that I thought of when I was bouncing some ideas off of Rob, my cousin who plays a lot on our channel. And we came up with this pretty sweet deck, so let's get right into it. We have the full 3 copies of X-saber emmersblade. Of course, emmersblade is going to be the heart and soul of our deck, as this is sort of the inspiration for our deck. It is an insect monster, and it's a battle recruiter, which is very, very important, as the battle recruiters are important for the insect kind of game plan that the insect deck really can do. However, this is an X-saber deck, and emmersblade is a great card that you get to play 3 copies of, so we're going to play all 3, and we'll sort of show some of the synergy later on. We have the full 3 copies of Airbellum. It's pretty easy to get Airbellum's effect off in this deck, so I like to play all 3 copies. I like 3 in most of my X-saber decks in this format, but between 2 and 3 is usually where you want to be. I like 3 in this list. We have 2 fulhelmknights. Card's just solid. I mean, just a solid X-saber card can get some value, and getting emmersblade out of your graveyard for free is pretty awesome. And of course, you can make synchro monsters with this just by killing a monster at battle, so very, very solid card here. I have the 2 copies of Faultroll. Don't like to max out on this card, but I do like 2 just to have that initial power spike in your deck to really try and go off, maybe get a couple cards out of their hands with the Gottoms synchro monster, or just try to OTK and do some crazy nonsense with this card. Card is very powerful. We have the 1 copy of Ragigura. Similar with the Faultroll, right? It just gives you that power spike, gives you some combos to enable, but also just having the 1 of as an option to get out of your deck is really powerful with the emmersblade activation. So really strong card, does a cute few things, can help you make armory arm, which is a very powerful card in the extra deck. So I like to play the 1 copy of Ragigura. Of course, we have the obligatory 1 copy of Rescue Cat. We're just summoning Airbellum out of our deck, but we're always going to have floating monsters in play since our recruiter count is so high in this deck, so I do like the 1 copy of Rescue Cat, very powerful here. We have, for our insect package, the 3 copies of Howling Insect, and this is pretty awesome, right, because it's an insect monster, it's a battle recruiter, but it can also go and grab our emmersblade. So we're going to have 6 copies of emmersblade essentially in our deck, as they all can find one another. The Howling Insects can go and find the emmersblade, which just gets us into our X-saber plays a lot more consistently, but also sets up for some interesting combos on the insect part of our deck, as we can keep ramming these guys into one another and get value out of our insect cards, which I'll explain in just a second. So more targets for our Howling Insect. We're going to get the one Flying Kamakiri. Card's just really good. I think it's just a level 4 insect that you can grab, and it's part of our small package here, that when this dies by battle, it gets a win monster 1500 or less, and our only target is the 1 copy of B-list soldier. You can send this card to your graveyard alongside 1 insect monster you control to draw 2 cards, and it easily becomes a pot of greed when you're doing your combos. And another one to enable this little package here, we have the 1 copy of Wurm Warrior. It's basically a 1-drop Doom Dozer. You remove 1 insect from your graveyard, drop this card into play, 1900 beat stick. You can use it for synchro fodder, or you can use it for this sweet combo here. And the main card of our deck is the 3 copies of Verdant Sanctuary, and this is what makes this deck tick, of course. It makes all the insect decks in Edison just viable, right? Because whenever a insect is destroyed by battle, card effect, anything, you can go and grab an insect monster from your deck to your hand equal to the level of the monster that was destroyed, and that's how you're going to get your value in this deck, but also just any insect deck, as we can really get some value here. If we have this card in play, we can then ram our monsters, right? So we can go, say, Howling Insect, we can crash our Howling Insect, go and grab a, say, emmersblade. We'll just go straight for an emmersblade this time. And because a level 3 monster died, we can go and grab a level 3 insect, go and grab an emmersblade for our hand. Whether we're going to discard that for later, we can use it for following turns. Also, just having a +1 in your hand is very good. And then we can go and crash and go for our tuner monsters with our X-sabers. Or we can go and get more value, because this is not once per turn. This card is insane. It's very powerful. If you have multiple, you search for each one. It's just a very good card. It's more than once per turn. But the main combo line that I like to do for the insect is you go into this one here. You crash into monster. The Verdant Sanctuary searches our emmersblade. But this time we go for Flying Kamakiri. Kamakiri can then crash into their monster and go get the B-list soldier. And the the Verdant Sanctuary can now search a level 4 insect monster, which is important because it lets us get our Worm Warrior to our hand. And this is sort of a little value engine here, as now in our main phase 2, we can drop the Worm Warrior into play by banishing our Flying Kamakiri out of the graveyard. And now we have the essentially Pot of Greed, where we tribute both of them, B-list Soldier's effect, and draw 2 cards. And we basically get 3 cards for essentially the price of 1, just crashing those recruiters. And the more times you crash the recruiters, the more value you get to your hand. So you can just keep crashing Howling insects. Say you crash all 3 and then go into your combo here with the little engine. You can then just get 3 emmersblades to your hand. I mean, like, it's not, emmersblade is a little bit of a slow card, but if you have ways to discard them and to enable things like that, I think it's very powerful, and you're just getting value to your hand, and it's very good. I mean, I think this little engine just provides a deck with a lot of different functionalities, and it just adds something different to the X-saber deck, as well as just the consistency. The fact that you get to, like, just search your emmersblade normally without even the Verdant Sanctuary, just having this into emmersblade to start going off with your own X-saber plays is very good. But I think this little 6-card package alongside the 3 copies of the Sanctuary just give this deck a little bit of a power spike and give your deck a lot of things to be doing. And the Insect engine gets a little bit better in the trap lineup as well. So I do like this little package here to help support the X-saber engine, and I think it's just really sweet. I'm surprised I haven't seen a deck like this floating around so far, because Emmersblade is a level 3 insect. It combos well with the Howling insect, and it's just a sweet card. So very, very awesome here. I do like the addition of the insects. I think it does a lot for the deck. We have the 2 copies of Creature Swap. We're playing the Sick Battle Recruiters, so we can go and fetch our monsters, get +1s that way. You can go for Airbellum, which is really good. Give them the Emmersblade, you attack over it, then you get an Airbellum and discard a card out of their hand by attacking directly. 2 copies of Book of Moon, mainly to facilitate fulhelmknight, killing a monster and a defensive monster by battle, getting value that way, but also just a solid defensive card. It does a lot of work. I'm electing to play the 1 copy of Pot of Avarice. You can easily crash all your recruiters into the graveyard, set this card up, and also if you resolve a rescue cat, there's 3 monsters in your graveyard already, most likely even more than that. So just the 1 Pot of Avarice. I don't really want to draw it too often, just like sort of a late game, get those engines back in the deck and draw extra cards. And then the very important spell cards, we have 1 copy of Mind Control, 1 copy of Brain Control. Because our Emmersblade is mostly going to be floating into tuner monsters, we can then go ahead and take their monster and synchro with it. So it's really important when you're getting value out of the Insect engine, and you have to end on some sort of board, right? And if you can't really do anything, a lot of the times you get to take that monster you're crashing into by ending on an Airbellum, or even a fulhelmknight or whatever tuner you want, synchro, and bam, get rid of their monster. Now you have a bunch of card advantage added to your hand via the Verdant Sanctuary, plus the tempo you have because of the synchro monster you have in play. So these cards are very powerful, especially in combination with Rescue Cat as well. So very, very strong cards here. Onto the trap lineup, we get 3 copies of Lair Wire. A card is really sweet. You can banish a insect from your graveyard, destroy a monster. Really powerful. I think it's just a very strong card, very, very reactive. You get very chainable, just does a lot of things. I think it's excellent in combination with Airbellum, just keeping the board clear, letting those attacks go through, not really having to commit too much of the board, right? Just, hey, kill your monster, normal summon Airbellum. Like, that's a fine play, and I think this card just helps clear the way, and also it's just one of the best interactive cards in the format. I think it's one of the reasons why the Insect deck exists, because this card is very, very, very powerful. Just essentially just destroying a monster for the cost of a trap card is very good and chainable, and very, very good. And then we have full 3 copies of Gottoms Emergency Call. I like all 3 because we have the Howling insects into our Emmersblades to crash multiple times, and we're just going to have a lot of access to the Emmersblade getting into the graveyard. So let's just play Double Monster Reborn. We're going to be able to activate it a lot. So I do like the full 3 copies there. I have 2 copies of Wing Blast. I like this as a way to use that card advantage we're getting off of Sanctuary, just adding value to our hand via the insects crashing. But a way to use the card, a way to use the cards extra in hand, get them in the graveyard, potentially reborn them with the Gottoms call. But also, I think it's just fine. Like, if you go down a card, you have a lot of ways to regain that card. The main one being summon Airbellum and attack. You know, like, people don't realize, like, even if you're going down the card, that might be temporary, as, like, there's a lot of ways to get cards back in Edison format once you have resolved the Wing Blast for a -1. And sometimes you're even targeting a card that took 2 cards to make, something like a Stardust Dragon that they committed 2 cards to. But I like this as it's easy to get your card back with Airbellum, and it's easy to have value in the hand once you have the Verdant Sanctuary engine going. So I do like the 2 copies here. I have 1 copy of Bottomless, only 1 just because we have the layer wires to sort of remove our opponent's creatures, but the 1 Bottomless is fine. I think it's obviously a good card. We have Solemn Judgment to protect our back rows and protect our crashing plays. We have the 1 copy of Torrential Tribute, of course, very, very strong. 1 copy of Trap Stun. I like Trap Stun in all of my X-saber decks. I think it's just a solid card, but also can enable it, just let your crashing plays go through, which is very powerful as well. Just getting that value and then trying to control the game from that point. And the 41st card in the deck, or, you know, one of the 41, is the 1 copy of Starlight Road. I think it's important to protect your Verdant Sanctuary value engine, and being able to set this with multiple back rows and the Sanctuary up, it just means you're going to get a lot of value over time. And Stardust can just also take over games. Everyone knows how powerful Starlight Road can be. Onto the extra deck, we have the 1 copy of Army Arm, the Catastor, 2 copies of Hyunlei, very powerful card. We want to have access to it. I run 2 all the time. I think it's just staple. I see a lot of builds playing 1. I think 2 is fine. You're going to have access to it in this deck by crashing and just going off. So I do like the 2 Hyunleis here. I then have Goyo Guardian as well as brionac, and I like the tech flamvell or uruquizas. You're going to make 6s a lot. Whenever you make a lot of different 6s, or you can make 6s a lot, I just like having access to this, as this card can steal a game. It can pierce a lot versus the dandelion tokens. It provides a threat in a lot of different matchups that's powerful, and also can steal games in the late game. So I like the flamvell uruquizas. We have for 7s the 1 Black Rose and 1 Urbellum. Urbellum, of course, very strong, as you can make it, threaten your opponent's hand, but also be an X-saber to special summon that Faultroll. So very strong here. We have the 1 Stardust Dragon. We have Colossal Fighter. Onto the 9s, we have the Mistworm, of course, and the 2 copies of Gottoms. I think 2 is fine. I don't think it comes up as much as people think in X-sabers, but it's very powerful, and when it does come up, it does some really nasty things. So the 2 copies of Gottoms, and the last monster in the extra deck is our Chimera Tech for the sideboard, of course. And to start the sideboard, everyone knows we have the SSG staple of 3 copies of DD Crow, 2 copies of Cyber Dragon. We want them in every deck, mostly. We want this early and often. We want this early and often going second, and against machine decks. So the 5 SSG staple here. Moving on to spells, 2 copies of Smashing Ground. I think this deck has a really hard time dealing with bigger threats. Just getting rid of things like Absolute Zero is really, really important, and just get them off the board. Smashing Ground also combos with our Airbellums to kind of just get through, going second, get through, get that +1, so very strong. We have 1 copy of MST, as well as 2 Dust Tornadoes, just our back row removal. I like them a lot. 2 copies of Pulling the Rug. I love Pulling the Rug in these recruiter-style decks, as Caius can be a big detriment on your game plan. Your main game plan is going to be getting those insects into the grave, getting those emmersblades into the grave for value, and if you are setting one on turn 1, after they put the tree one in your grave, you're going to want to have that Pulling the Rug set, as it can really put you back a long time with that game plan. Of Caius, Ryza, you can't just keep getting Caius and Ryzas out of the game. So I like having the 2 Pulling the Rugs to protect your recruiters in that way. I have 1 copy of Trap Hole. I've been pretty impressed with this card in general. Card's just a solid card, and it's very good against Blackwings, denying them their Black Whirlwind Search. I like that a lot. I have the 2nd copy of Starlight Road in the sideboard for Geyserus, for Judgment Dragon, things like that. Very important there. And I have would not be an SSG profile without it, the 1 copy of Trap Dust Shoot. Just remember, people, it comes in when you're going first, and you draw it all the time. You outskill your opponent. You are a better player than them. All you have to do is just draw this card, and you literally are the best player in the room. So just play this card in your sideboard at least, and you will win. That is about it, guys. Let me know what you guys thought about the deck profile. I thought this deck is just pretty sweet, like getting to play the Insect Engine alongside a beloved X-saber deck. I think X-saber is one of those decks that After Edison format, it gets a little like, people don't really like it, but during Edison, people love it, right? It's a pretty sweet deck that does a lot of different things, and it's just like a fan favorite in my opinion. And having the insect engine sort of supporting the X-saber is just really, really awesome. I think this deck and idea was pretty sweet. Thanks to Rob for kind of bouncing ideas and getting me to this point. I think just seeing that this is an insect and this is a 3, really cool synergy. And that is about it, guys. So without further ado, this is Dan V from SSG signing out.